Let us first look at what our mind is, so we can understand how we're going to bring on well-being and happiness. Our mind is a self-organizing and regulates the flow of information and energy within us and between us. And if we optimize this flow, we get harmony and resilience. If we do not optimize, then we get chaos, rigidity, resulting in mental ill health. So the mind organizes and regulates this flow of information and energy inside ourselves, within our body and brain, and outside ourselves in our relationships and our environment. The proper function of our mind depends on good regulation. In mental illness such as post-traumatic stress disorder, the hippocampus of the brain is not well integrated into brain functioning. In traumatic childhood, we can get lack of integration between various mental pathways, resulting in unhappiness and mental illness in these traumatized children. In bipolar disease, there is poor integration across the brain. And all this can be seen on MRIs, that's medical resonance imagery, in these patients. Our relationships are extremely important to our well-being and happiness. What happens in our environment affects what happens in our mind. We're not separate entities unaffected by our relationships. We're interdependent. You can see in our daily life the people who we're with, what type of mood they're in, how they affect us, what type of mood we are in, how we affect them. What happens around us in our environment affects our mind and body. And what happens in our body affects our mind. If we get sick or injured, what happens in our mind affects our body. If we're unhappy, depressed, suicidal, it all affects each other. We're interdependent. How we relate to others and they relate to us and treat us affects us and changes the energy information flows in the mind and in the body. We have feelings which come up when people have particular attitudes to us in our body and makes us feel strong or weak or gives us pain in our stomach. We have certain emotions of anger or love. It changes our mind and body. It's easy to see in children. If they are having traumatic childhood or things happen to them, these can have long-term effects. And that's why the way we bring up our children is so important to their lives' well-being and their own ultimate happiness. Attention concentrates our mental energy, and where attention goes, neural firing goes, our neural connections grow. So attention changes the neural pathways in our brain. What captures our attention, or what we concentrate on, determines the changes in the brain's neural pathways. And mindfulness practice, which is attending to the present moment, watching what your mind is thinking, has been shown to improve integration between different neural pathways. It assists with organizing and helps regulate the flow of energy and information within us and between us. It makes us act and think in certain ways. The mindfulness practice helped us optimize harmony and resilience and our inner strength. Attention to what is happening at the present moment, what's happening now, is exceedingly important. But many people aren't watching what's happening now. And over 80% of their time are spent dreaming about what has happened in the past or what may happen in the future. These are only dreams, they're not present reality. Just look back at yourself. How much of your time are you actually thinking about what's happening at the moment? And how much of your time are you dreaming about what has happened or what may happen or what you want to happen? But it's only the present moment we can make effective decisions in our thoughts and speech and actions. It's the only realistic time where we can do things to determine what's going to happen to us in the future. The past is gone and the future has not come yet. And for optimal mental health, we should aim to improve our interconnectedness by controlling where our attention goes. And this helps regulate the flow of energy and information within us and between us. So if we want to improve our optimal mental health, we have to stay looking at what's happening at this moment, now. For where our attention goes, neural firing patterns follow, causing neural connections to grow, which we can improve our brain connections. So if we're always dreaming what's happening and could happen in the future, or what's happened in the past, our brains follow that type of connections. We're not with it. We're gone. We're not with it in the present moment when decisions makes determines what happens to us. Improving our cognitive intelligence can help us with this. So conation, this is the mental faculty of purpose, desire, or will to perform or take action, what is called volition. And cognitive intelligence is the ability to discern which desires and intentions truly lead one's own and others' well-being, and then take them on, adopt them. So it's the ability to see what is going to help us have happiness in our lives. It's letting go of intentions that will undermine our own and others' well-being. So over the last century, there's been a huge change. In the present century, we think differently about the brain to what we used to. Last century, brains were inflexible and could only be fixed by drugs. What you're born with, you're stuck with. And our own century, 21st century, know today that brains are changing. Their neuroplasticity changing all the time. And there are new frontiers opening up through mind training to help bring on better lives. Now, new knowledge gives us a chance to solve our society's problems. And unfortunately, there are many problems in modern society, many resulting from not understanding what brings well-being and happiness, and with the resultant isolation of individuals and the aiming at getting many things instead of improving our relationships with others. If we look across the world, depression is the primary cause of disability, and this is 32% higher in wealthy countries. So if we look at the United States, the gross national product since 1950 has increased 50 times, whereas the change in well-being measured since that time, 1950, has not improved at all. And the increase in depression over that period has increased 10 times. Also, 20% of high school aged boys in the US have been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is a mental well-being disorder. 30% of all veterans who come back from the various wars in the Defence Force have considered suicide, and 22 commit suicide every day. So there are many problems across the Western world, and that was first of all looking at the US. In the United Kingdom, research shows that only 1 in 5 people experience full mental health or flourishing. Only 1 in 5. Only 30% of mental disorders can be treated satisfactorily with medicines. 50% of mental illness starts by the age of 14. And they found that depression is comparable to smoking as a health risk factor. We all know how bad smoking is for our health, causing lung and heart disease. Depression causes the same type of disease in bodies to the same extent. In Australia, according to child adolescent component of the National Health Survey, 40% of young people aged 4 to 7 were reported to have a mental health problem. The most frequently found were somatic complaints, delinquency behaviour, attention problems, and aggressive behaviour. Suicide rates have also been increasing. In Papua New Guinea, people have lived close to their environment, ranging from harsh and cold to hot and relaxed, and customs have evolved so as to cope well with that environment. In all societies, the importance of relationships have been recognized, and the Wontok system has been developed. The community supports each other, including those with all but the most severe mental illnesses. However, this is now changing, with the influences of modern and Western society, and the emphasis becoming put more on the self and the individual achievement, resulting in more isolation and disparities between the rich and the poor. With the growing desire for Western lifestyle, there's been a migration to towns and cities and development of settlements and a crowded and underserviced way of life. This resulted in children in larger urban areas not only being faced with virtual violence on TV screens and on computer games, but also actual violence in streets and settlements. They witness such activity as being potentiated by alcohol and other drugs. And this affects on their well-being, or brought by these things, affect their upbringing, and they tend to follow these type of examples in the rest of their lives. But we all have the same basic aim to achieve happiness. But do we have the ability to discern which desires and intentions truly lead to our own and others' well-being and happiness, and to adopt them, while letting go of desires and intentions that will undermine our own and others' well-being? Are we able to look at which ones to choose? For it's critical for us to develop this ability for our own, our families, communities, and our nation's well-being and human flourishing and development. The human pursuit of happiness is slightly different from animals, because animals just seek pleasure, but humans aspire not only to be happy, but to be happier. That is, we are all seeking something better in life. We should assess if happiness is really the ultimate goal of what we're doing, or it is a means to an end, such as we say we think we're going to get happy by getting more money, more power, or more prestige. But is this really true? Do we really get happiness from these things? Or are these goals deluding us? So with our cognitive intelligence, we can find an effective means to find fulfillment and genuine happiness. There are basically two kinds of happiness. First one we can call hedonic pleasure. And that's derived from what we can get from the world and dependent on sensory, pleasant senses, mental and neural stimulation. When we have nice feelings in our body, nice sights we see, that is called hedonic pleasure. And genuine happiness is derived from what we bring into the world and not dependent on pleasant sensory and mental stimulation. We need to have a certain amount of hedonic pleasure. We need to have good input, good things to help us when we are sick, when we need understanding in our education systems. We need enough food. We need enough good housing, this type of thing. So we need a basic level of so-called hedonic pleasures for be able to develop genuine happiness, which we can then concentrate on what is happening and what we can bring to the world, and not dependent just on our stimulation of our senses. So genuine human happiness and flourishing depended on three aspects of our development: wisdom, mental balance, and ethics or beneficial behaviour. So let's look at these. Behaviour, which gives us flourishing, is that involves having respect for others and doing to them what you would like them to do to you, which means basically to develop love and compassion for all beings. And this means behaviour that does not cause harm or suffering to oneself or others. And this gives social and environmental flourishing and well-being. And that results in harmony within our family, communities and nations, and international relations. Harmony in the surrounding environment, which means we can have a sustainable economy without destroying the environment, without destroying our forests and trees just to make money. So there's a harmonious balance between between unity and diversity between various groups of people. So we have people from different parts of the country coming together, or from different ethnic groups, different belief systems. There's diversity, but there's unity in trying to bring together harmony between ourselves and others and our environment. So we look now at mental balance, that's within ourselves. There's a sense of well-being that is not dependent on these external or internal stimuli by our feelings, our senses, and it's qualified by serenity, joy, contentment, rather than excitement and arousal. If we depend on our feelings to get happiness, we like having arousal, like being aroused, our feelings aroused and feel excitement. Whereas the well-being is not dependent on these external stimuli, is one qualified by serenity, that's quietness and joy and contentment. And it's cultivated with cognitive intelligence, that's recognizing beneficial desires and recognizing desires that are not beneficial and choosing the beneficial ones if we're intelligent. Attention ability to keep focused on what's happening in the present moment. Cognitive intelligence, recognizing things as they are. And affective and emotional intelligence, keeping our emotions in order. So now we look at the wisdom dimension of flourishing. And this can also be termed spiritual flourishing. And it's concerned with deeply understanding realities of this world and their constant change, our interconnectedness and the dependence with others and with all things in our environment. And appreciating the importance of our relationships with others, our interbeing. Our cognitive intelligence can become unbalanced. You can have a deficit, which is a sort of apathetic loss of desire for happiness and its causes, which means we're just lazy and making no effort to follow good or virtuous practices. Or it can become hyperactive with obsessive desires that eschews reality of the present, just letting your desires take over, so your life just goes after them. Or you can have dysfunction, just desires for things that are not conductive to one's own or others' well-being and happiness, like addiction to drugs, which damage the body, or to do things that damage yourself and others. For example, when you take drugs, you can't think clearly to see what's happening in your mind. You can't help yourself make the right choices. You have to also do things which can damage others while you're under the influence of these drugs. So, if we want cognitive intelligence, and so we have the desire for our genuine happiness and well-being, we've got to watch out for deficit and giving up and just being lazy. We've got to watch out for obsessions and taking over, by desires just taking over, or dysfunction, just doing things which are not going to help and cause you problems in the long run. So, look at the kinds of unhappiness we have. Stimulus dependent. That's when we get our feelings excited, what we see, what happens to our skin, this type of thing. And happiness is triggered by misfortune or unpleasant things or circumstances which the world seems to bring upon us. So things from outside us. And stimulus independent is unhappiness that arises from within, without apparently being caused by outside circumstances, such as getting depressed and unhappy, which have many things resulting from things from outside, but it's also due to our nervous interaction with our body. So the causes and conditions of unhappiness. Virtually any outer circumstance could trigger unhappiness for someone, but something that makes someone unhappy could make another person happy. So it's the way we view things in this world. So the true causes of unhappiness are imbalances and afflictions in our own mind, which include craving, hostility, and delusions about our separateness from others and from the world around us. So when these are out of balance, when we desire something, we desire a certain type of feeling, we have a certain affliction, a dislike, anger, jealousy, we have stress or fear in our minds, these all cause unhappiness. And also we don't see clearly, with wisdom, our relationships in the world and with those around us. One of the problems which causes unhappiness is the way we face things in addictions. Addictions to sensations, what we want all the time, our cravings and desires. So we can divide addictions to 3 areas. Addictions to sensory and intellectual stimulation, such as TV and talking a lot. Section number 2 we can call addictions to obsessive, compulsive ideas and views. So, I am right, he's wrong, I must get this thing, I must have this type of feeling, like I get with drugs, or marijuana, or alcohol. Or you can also get addiction to a person. You need that person for happiness, especially in sexual relationships. The third type of addiction is addiction to activities, where we get overactive and quarrels and trying to force our own way on people, have passions, fighting, wars, terrorism, trying to force others to follow our ideas. We also have bold and often bad ventures, and not being able to stay quietly by ourselves. These are 3 main types of addictions which will cause us problems and make us unhappy. And the underlying nature of these addictions and craving attachments is the kinds of desire which we forcefully superimpose on agreeable qualities of an object. Cognitively screens out its disagreeable qualities, and then the desired object is a true source of pleasure and well-being. So the way we see objects, like if we're young people about to get married, we want to get married, we tend to see the good things in the person we want to be married to, and then obscure and not want to see the things that are not so desirable. Then after living together for a year or 2, then we start saying, oh, we had these undesirable aspects as well in the partner we chose, and then problems arise. Likewise, we want something from a store, we think it's fantastic, we get it, and then we didn't see properly, it had quite a few faults with it. Also, we want to get wealth, we want money, we want to be wealthy. But when we get money, we get many friends who want to share the money with us, but they're not real friends. They're just people who want our money. And many of our things we get from being wealthy don't really give us happiness. Happiness doesn't come through being wealthy. It doesn't also come through getting power to boss other people to follow our ideas. Power is going to finish. When we get older, on our deathbed, or unable to keep this powerful position, what use is that to us? We can only turn things in the way we want it when we have that power. And many of the times people are going to try and stab us in the back when we have power. Likewise when we're famous. So common objects of this craving is wealth, power and fame. And these do not give us lasting happiness. Now we look at our free will to choose what we really want. Free will is the ability to make decisions and act in ways that are conducive to one's and others' genuine happiness. That's what we want in life. We want to have the free will to choose happiness that's going to be really good for us. But the more the mind is dominated by afflictions of craving and hostility and delusion, the less free we are. The more we're led on by our feelings and our desires, the more we want things, or the more we hate people, the more we dislike things, or the more we see things as away from us, separate from us. I am more important, I am selfish, I get things for myself, and we cut off other people. The less we see that we're interdependent with them, the less we see we're interdependent with nature. Like at the moment, people are just destroying forests, destroying trees just digging up the ground, destroying nature, and the resultant is the climate change problem. So the more the mind is dominated by afflictions of craving, hostility and delusion, the less free we are. You can see, because of all the reactions happening in the world at the moment, the less free we are to choose how we're going to live well. If we have this in ourselves, the less free we are to choose right things that are really going to help us. So, to be able to be free, we must recognize desires in our minds before they manifest in our speech and behaviour, and choose which ones to adopt and which ones to let go of. So we must become aware of the time between the spark of a desire and the flame of acting on it comes into effect. So we do this with mindfulness, which is the faculty at which you are able to bear in mind a chosen thing without distraction or forgetfulness. So we can see this thing come up. We can see this feeling come up by being mindful. And then introspection, which is the faculty by which we're able to monitor our desires, attention, thoughts, and emotions. There's a faculty which we can look into what's happening in our mind. And then we can note the interval between the spark of the desire coming and the flame of its intention to act on that and the behavior. So we can take notice of what's happening in our mind and take action whether we're going to follow that desire or not. So the perfection of cognitive intelligence is having the wisdom to desire that which is only truly beneficial to oneself and others in our life. Knowing what desires and intentions lead us to happiness in this life and beyond this life, and acting upon them. And knowing what desires and intentions lead us to liberation and spiritual awakening and acting upon them. So when we have proper grown perfection in cognitive intelligence, we can choose and see what is going to bring us true happiness. And we can see that we should be able to make decisions to act on those desires which are going to help us get true happiness. So flourishing and general happiness is the quality of well-being that carries one through all the vicissitudes of life and death. It derives from knowing ourselves and our relation to the world and universe. So liberation through insight. We actually see things as they really are. Not as we desire, want them, not as other people tell us we should be seeing it, but seeing for ourselves things as they are. It comes from being able to choose between the desires that will bring us genuine happiness and well-being and those that will not. So we should try to aim for this if we want a truly happy life. So, if we want a truly happy life, we must remember that where attention goes, neural firing goes, and neural connections grow. And we should practice attending the present moment, for this has been shown to improve the integration between neural pathways. It's the only time we can make decisions and do or say things which will affect our futures. Being mindful and staying in the present moment assists us with self-organizing and helps us regulate the flow of energy and information within us and around us. In other words, it helps our mind work properly. And this mindfulness practice helps to optimize harmony and resilience. We must make ourselves aware of the time between the spark of a desire and the flame of the action of speech or body activity, and make the choice, are we going to follow that or not? In other words, we use our mindfulness to watch what's happening and introspection to look within and note the interval between the spark and desire, then take the action whether or not to follow that desire, whether it's going to help us or not. We have the power to do this. It's just a matter of practice, of looking within and being mindful. So for optimal mental health, it all works together. From wisdom, developing a wisdom of understanding the world around us, understanding things as they really are, not as we think they might be or like them to be or people tell us that should be, just watching and observing and being strong within ourselves. We get our mental balance so we can use our attention properly where watching what's happening in the present moment, not just streaming, and we're making the right decision at the present moment to help us have genuine happiness. And we behave in a way which is going to support this and not bring us problems. Because if we behave in an unbeneficial way, harming ourselves and others, such as drinking, if we're drunk, we can't make decisions in the present moment on what's happening in our mind, because we can't even see our mind, what's happening in it, because we're under the influence of drugs and alcohol, which also damage our body as well as damaging our mind. So we behave in a way that's going to be beneficial to ourselves and also to others, because what we give to our environment and what we give to our relationships will come back to us. What we do, what we say, whether it's good or bad, the same will come back to us in our relationships, because they will reflect what we do. If somebody is angry with us, we feel anger in ourselves. If we're angry with somebody, they feel anger in themselves. If we harm our environment, it will cause problems in the future. So for optimal mental health and well-being, we should cultivate the wisdom, mental balance, and the good behaviour, the ethics, to bring beneficial results to ourselves and others. So we've got to work and try hard for well-being and happiness. So if you'd like to know and follow up more on this, here are some references from Dr. Dan Siegel, the Mindsight Institute, Alan Wallace, Santa Barbara Institute for Conscious Studies, to Dr. Richard Davison, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Mind and Life Institute, Thich Nhat Hanh Foundation, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, Mindful Living Programs. All those can be found on the internet if you'd like to follow up further to help strengthen what I've been saying. So it's worth the effort, really to try hard and have a happy life. It's available to us all. But we've got to do it ourselves and work hard at it and watch what's happening in our mind.